Okay, I've got a question for you off of that. So you have multiple systems. You've trained in multiple systems. You also have the Bagua on top of that. You've got Tai Chi on top of that. I think you still do smatterings of Wing Chun over here in a weird corner.
Nobody knows that quite.
Oh yeah. Anyway, I heard through the grapevine. So how is that what you're working on now with the multiple systems? Your expression of your understanding of each one of those? Is that kind of what you're working on these days for your own practice?
What am I doing these days? It's kind of hard to explain what I'm doing these days. I could. Okay. I just have to kind of give you the steps so it makes sense. The way I see it, training multiple styles is not as hard as it looks. It's not as hard as people think. I think if you want to train more than one thing, you have to train one until you're good at it. Like I was lucky, right? I did almost 10 years with the Jingwu. So I had just foundations and foundations and foundations. And that's the thing, is that different styles all have the same foundations. So as you've learned one, when you start to compare it to something else, then you start to notice, well, wow, this is like 30 or 40% the same. And if you train another style, you start to see more. Wow, this was actually 60% the same as this one and that one. So what I ended up doing was, because there's so many different systems in the Shaolin system I learned. This is like how it started. These tiny little systems, right? Like 1 or 2 forms, but lots of them. Was I started taking notes on what their primary themes were. Like, what does this thing teach me? If this is a trapping form, right? Or a sticking form or whatever. And then when I sat back and looked at it, I realized that there were redundancies. That I didn't need to train and remember all of these things to train that skill. So I just started cutting it down. And once it came down all the way to simply kind of thematic ideas, then the amount of types of practice changed. So what I do now is I practice forms that I like or that I'm planning on teaching or I want to keep, right? Like, so I practice my Xin Yi and I do some Tai Chi, and I really like Bagua. It just happens a lot, so I just do it. But like, I don't practice monkey much, if at all, and try not to. I don't want to do that anymore. That stinks. But once I get from that point, now what I'm doing is I've been kind of pulling it all the way down into exercises. So again, back to that first lesson with George, you do too many forms. Beats me up. Okay, well, what should I do then? Everybody else said do forms. He says, well, forms are just this. And he taught me like 8 exercises. And I've been tearing them apart for 10 years. And it makes sense in a very weird way. But the human body can actually only move so many ways. There's only so many circles, inwards and outwards, upwards and downwards, right? And once you can generate them properly, so like the body mechanics work and all that stuff, then you're a Wing Chun guy. Like a Tan Sao it's not always called a Tan Sao in every style, but they all kind of look like that because they all kind of work on the same principle. Bong Sao is the same way. Like every martial art does a wing arm. Everybody has it. They call them different things, but everybody does that thing. Everybody does the elbow roll over the elbow, So it's all those similarities that come together, I think. And then it's what is the real power behind it. So like if I need to be able to pull downwards and towards my body, I need to train things that do that. If I need to be able to pick people off the ground to bounce them in the air, well, I need to train something that helps me do that. Right? That's all that I train now. Like my training now, I look like an old man in the park, essentially. I do like arm swinging exercise. It looks like Qigong probably. I do arm swinging exercises. I do some turning with my circle walking, but in my mind, what's going on is different than what's going on just with my arm. If I'm swinging hook punches, I might be training which bone in my arm. I actually just taught this at my last workshop. So if you're doing just swinging your arms up and down, it's like an uppercut. What I was teaching was, which bone are you striking with? So if I'm swinging my arms up and down, and I put only my mind in my radius, the bone where my thumb is, the quality of what I look like, move like, and hit like will change. And if I do the exact same thing and I say, okay, let's pick the ulna this time, suddenly it's not an uppercut anymore. The movement's the same, but I'm chopping downwards. And and the quality changes and everything else. Or I could be training, what did I teach last week? Gazing upon distant mountains was last week. So that's where you're training your movement, and you know your movement's okay because you've done 1,000 of them. So now you're going to work on something else. So gazing on distant mountains is when you look at an object, like across the street or whatever, and you let your hands pass in front of your eyes because you're practicing, but you pay them no attention. And what'll happen is your hands will go invisible. It's really neat. You'll just like see through them. But because your intention is so strong, when you get touched, you have much more force than people expect. Because mentally, you're not in your hands. You're over there behind them. And it's not your fault if they stick themselves in the way. Like, that is up to them, right? That's very drunken boxing, that. But yeah, that's what I practice now. Is it just looks like I draw circles with my arms, or I throw a couple of forms. I do weapons because I like them.
They're cool. They are cool.
But it all comes down to the same things. Always comes down to the same things now.
What's your favorite weapon?
My favorite weapon is, I'd have to say swords. I like swords. I really like swords. Yeah. I actually got really, you guys heard that I got robbed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was that, like 6 months ago or so?
A year
ago
almost?
Maybe a year ago. Yeah.
That was awful.
My whole weapons, like everything from my school, all of my weapons were stolen. Yeah. Luckily, I guess I've got some good karma. One of the guys I taught in a workshop in the States last year, he works at Man at Arms Reforged, that TV show.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. You know the one, right? Yeah, Kevin. And so anyway, Kevin came and trained Xin Yi with me, and he's decided that he wants to do a line of swords with me. So I'm getting new swords to play with, and then we'll have them for sale and stuff.
Hell yeah, Neil.
Cool.
That's awesome. Good for you, man.
Yeah,
good for
really
you.
Cool. Yeah, it should be fun. It should be fun. I'm looking forward to it. He hasn't sent me a sword yet, but I do have my pirate knives. My Yellow River pirate knives. Yeah. They're like Wing Chun butterfly knives, but smaller.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, you're gonna have to show me those sometime.
I'll show you. Yeah,
I
I actually have them. Yeah.
We'll have to compare and contrast because the big old.
They're a little different, I think. I think they're just a little different. They're more Bagua maybe, but
Okay.
I learned the Wing Chun knife form, but I don't know. I don't like the Wing Chun knives. They're like too heavy for me, like front weighted in a way. At least the ones I played.
I'll give you some tips some other time online.
Let's do that.
I'll make some videos for you on that. They're super fun.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I know before we got on, you were talking about how you and you've mentioned it several times. You've learned Bagua.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and you said you have a chunk system. And did you mention? I don't remember if you mentioned like where you picked that up.
Oh no, I didn't. I don't think. No. Bagua I started in. What year was that? It was right around when I was training with Lumpur, so like 2000, 2001, somewhere in there. I actually went to a retreat out in British Columbia. There was a Tai Chi retreat, and there was this gathering of like 5 or 6 masters. So paid my money and took my chances and went down, and I actually got really lucky. And I met a Xin Yi teacher, my first Xin Yi teacher, my first Bagua teacher, and one of my Qigong teachers as well, my medicine teacher as well. Actually, there was a whole bunch of guys there now that I think about it. But yeah, my first Bagua teacher was Hai Bahar, and then he trained with Andrea Falk. That's where that stuff came from. Sure. And then later on, I came across Yang Guotai, and I ended up getting the basics from his system. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. Yang Guotai was a guy that trained in Beijing. He actually kind of got lucky in a weird karmic way. He had his thumb ripped off at work when he was young.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I don't remember what he did, but he had his thumb ripped off. And he's on disability then, right? You got injured at work in communist China. Yeah. You're on the Iron Rice Bowl. So he didn't have to work, and he really liked Kung Fu. So he got really, really good at Kung Fu. Huh. He just hung out in the park in Beijing forever. So yeah, his Kung Fu is really interesting. It's like the most kind of like, other than the Gao guys, the most non-esoteric Bagua I've ever run into. Like it's like body mechanics, and the esoteria doesn't come for a long time. Mm-hmm. It's just a lot of hard work. One of my Bagua teachers, Dave, he the teacups exercise, I'm sure, very popular Bagua exercise. His favorite thing is to do with a sledgehammer. Like, for real, man. It's just crazy. It's torturous. Crazy, torturous people.
That's awesome.
That sounds like torture.
Yeah, but I mean, it's the truth, right? If you don't have the strength, you won't have the power to make anything work.
Yeah,
there's a triad, power, speed, and timing. If you miss one of the three, nothing works.
Yeah.
Simple as that. Nothing will ever work. Yeah. Because even if you're fast, no power, like, who cares? Hit him as many times as you want. He won't care.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth.
One of my favorite videos, of you is ranting about how everyone that sees me do push-ups, all the Tai Chi people are like, why the hell is this guy doing push-ups? It's like, you got to have a strong body, It's just.
That is totally it, man. People don't and it's always Yang style Tai Chi people. And yet they have in their own lineage a document from Yang Xiaoho wanting to kill himself because he was hurting so bad from training. Because his legs hurt so much that he had to drag himself back to bed at night and stuff. And then they're like, well, don't train too hard. Yeah, but your heroes train too hard. Shut up. Like, shut up. Your whole style came from Chen. You ever seen those guys? Like, there's nothing but torture there. You have it easy already. I mean, that's why I did Chen, because I'm stupid and like to torture myself. But I mean, because Yang style didn't make sense to me. It's too complicated. I honestly think it's more advanced in some ways than Chen. I think it had more time. I really do to be picked apart. But because of that, I mean, I'm too dense, right? I wanted to do the big, powerful kung fu guy stuff. But I mean, the young guys I've met are strong as hell. The ones that have power, they got power. But then the ones that don't, that tend to be like, don't do push-ups, they'd get blown over in a stiff wind. I mean, it's a lack of push hands training, right? They're just not training the whole of their art.
Right.
It's okay to do half of an art. Just know you are. If you just want to do Tai Chi for health, cool.
Yeah.
But I mean, don't think you're a fighter. Yeah. Just how it works. Don't think you're a master if you don't know both sides of a coin. I mean, for God's sakes, how many people think there's only one side to a coin and yet they handle them every day?
Yep. So true.
I see that a lot in Wing Chun. Right now we're having a big divide, and it's interesting that you say Yang style Tai Chi, because I'm seeing all these quotes attributed to Tai Chi trying to be forced onto Wing Chun. And I'm seeing a lot of it. And I'm also seeing a lot of people, either it's 100% fighting and drilling, or it's all Chi Sao.
See, I think that's the duality, right? People can't manage the balance somehow. It's not an easy thing to do, though. I mean, really, it's not. I mean, the first time I tried Wing Chun, I couldn't. Oh, I was so angry. All my teacher kept saying was, you have to relax. And yet his hands felt like lead on top of mine. I'm like, but you're not relaxed. I'm sure you're not relaxed. But it's such a difficult thing because you're running a balance that's very hard to attain. Whereas most Wing Chun guys I've met, they're honestly just too hard, I think. They just kind of power through it. And my criticism to them always is like, isn't it named after a girl?
Sure.
You're not acting like a girl. What are you doing? She's going to outsmart you, not outpower you. And I've always just thought, like, even if that is a baloney legend, there's a reason it's told. That means there's a feminine aspect and it's the prime aspect, not the secondary one. Like, because when I learned Wing Chun, that's the way I saw it. And the best guys I've met are the softest, scariest ones. Lo Man Cam.
Yeah, Lo Man Cam. Totally. I know exactly what you're talking about. Love that guy. For me, at least on that scale, it's the ability to instantly transition. Like that's where I focus everything on. Like if I encounter something, and it knocks the hand this way, am I going to fight it and try to stay here? Or am I going to use that and come back? Or if it's going this way, if I'm getting pulled that direction, am I actually going to go with the force that it's coming with? And that's where, to me, a lot of that feminine energy comes into is, I'm going to throw a good solid punch at you. But the second I feel something, that's information, right? Yeah. I always joked around and said that if Wing Chun was a bride, like the second that you slip the ring on her finger, she'd hit the jetpacks and get the hell out of there. She's like, I'm totally committed. I'm totally committed. And you just have it right over that second knuckle. Boom. She's out of there.
Can't see it.
Right?
I'm gone. Sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, sucker. I'm going on to the next guy.
Yeah. My Wing Chun teacher, his big quote for me was, Wing Chun is like water pushing against a dam. Any little crack, it'll slip through. And he's a nightmare. He's a nightmare because of that. Yeah.
That's a great quote.
Yeah. Yeah. Rob's good. He's really good, but I don't do Wing Chun, so can't talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. I knew that.
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Is that like a sprinkling sauce that you?
Really the reason I learned Wing Chun is I had a Kung Fu brother at Moz who was a Wing Chun master when he joined. So we were both beginners together. We'd be sparring and it'd be pretty equal. And then I'd get in front of him and I would be destroyed, like just utterly destroyed because we were totally mismatched that way. So I kept trying to find tricks and a way and I just couldn't. So finally I was like, man, what are you doing? And he's like, well, I did 10 years Wing Chun before I came here. Then I was like, called him a cheater, told me he was cheating and he had to teach me. So that worked out. And
there you go.
I started going to Chris's house and learning that. But it was awesome. It was one of those things is I just have always found that martial arts for me it's a work of finding my own error all the time. You know what I mean? Even when somebody smacks me around, my first instinct is, what was my error? What did I do here that made the mistake? And I mean, that's a hard lesson too. Sometimes you can do everything right, still get hit. Mm-hmm. There's still scary weirdos that can do crazy things you don't know. But most of the time, if you go through your own first, it stops the ego from flaring so hard, right?
Yep.
You don't get mad because you're losing or whatever, and you can get the lesson rather than, just a beating.
That takes a lot of adulting though. And I know. I think
sucks.
Yeah, it sure does. It sure does. Owen, do you have any questions for Neil? I've got a few over here, but I wanted to leave the table open for you, my friend.
Yeah, for sure. I know that you mentioned that you had done a 10 animal Xin Yi, and you also had done I'm assuming some kind of either Hebei or Shanxi Xin Yi.
Yeah.
Do you have any feel for how maybe they're the same or maybe how they're different, and maybe what you appreciate or don't like in either case?
I did Xin Yi before I did the 10 animal. Mm-hmm. But the system I did was pt2's Xin Yi system, which was just 5 elements and linking fists and some weapons. Mm-hmm. It was very, very small. So I did those for a few years, and I honestly never thought I'd find 10 animal Xin Yi. I literally got lucky. Kung Fu brother of mine, I met him, we started training, and we were doing Bagua actually, and I didn't even know he did it until later on. So I started with him, and then that's how I ran to George, right? There's some similarities, but there's definitely some differences. Like, I think that historically it's supposed to be that the 10 animal came earlier. First.
Yeah.
And then the later on the Dai family and their 12 animals were like another version of it, right? It was like an evolution from it. Mm-hmm. To me, I don't know. I'm trying to be as politic here as I can.
Sure.
But I definitely prefer 10 animal over the 12. For me, it's because there's a 12. Yeah. See that the phrase is in my head. My teacher said something that's really rude. I'm trying not to say it. You know what? I will, and I'll just say it's not me because it's a quote from him.
There you go.
That's what I'll do. Because I'm not saying this. Mm-hmm. I'm going to quote him and say, 12 animal Xin Yi is like going to the zoo, and suddenly you hear the tiger roar, and it's frightening. 10 animal Xin Yi Liu He, is like being in the jungle and hearing a tiger roar, and that's frightening. Yeah. And those are different things.
Those are very different things.
And it is kind of like that, I think. There's a restraint in 12 animal that it's like the primitive 10 animal didn't have it. there's an atavistic primitive nature in it that is just not the same. It doesn't care. Like, it just doesn't care. Did you ever hear the story about the Tai Chi kid who comes home to his master and he's gotten in a fight? He says, "Dad, I got in a fight." And his father's like, "Huh? Did you win?" And he's like, "Well, of course I won." And his dad walks over and looks at his shirt. It's got a little tear on his cuff. "Go practice your martial arts. I can't believe it. You tore your coat." Then there's the story about the Xin Yi kid who comes home. "Dad, I got in a fight." His dad looks at him, and his kid is broken and bloody, and his nose is smashed. He's got a black eye, and his coat's all torn, and there's blood all over him. "Did you win?" "Of course." "Good boy." That's the
like
difference.
that. Yeah, like that.
That's
like
the
that.
difference. Yeah, job will get done. There's just like there's a primitive nature to it. In fact, actually, I was told once that there's a good chance, because Xin Yi Liu He comes from the Muslim community, right?
Yes.
He was led out of the Muslim community not even that long ago. Like Yu Hualong, he was one of the first people to ever teach non-Muslims, which Yu Hualong was George's teacher.
Oh, wow.
It's not long ago, yeah. So what I was told actually is that part of the system is the fact that the Muslim faith keeps people peaceful spiritually. And that's why they let it get so violent the other way, right? Where it's just like, they do it so much body banging and iron body and stuff. They don't even teach you blocks. Like, the whole system has like 2 blocks in it.
Wow.
And the rest of it is like, I don't care if you hit me, you'll be dead. You know, if I block you, great, but you'll be dead. And the system makes a lot of sense to me because it's got this rolling, it's like waves on a shore. It's nonstop, where I do find that the 12 animal tends to fudge in too much. And there's too many starts and stops in my mind. So and it's probably just flavoring, right? I just prefer, because I'm a drunk. But remember, I'm a drunken boxer, right?
Right.
So I would rather not put a sharp fudge in on something, because I'd rather it just roll into the next thing.
Sure.
Right. So that could just be me. But that really works well with Liuhe for me. It's heavy, not sharp. Maybe that's what I'm thinking. 12 animal hits you like a knife, and 10 animal hits you like a wrecking ball. Different feeling. Like you must do Xin Yi. You dig
Yeah, for sure.
Right? So you must get some Xin Yi. So like, okay, here's a question for you. What range does Xin Yi fight at?
Actually, the way I learned it, we could fight it almost any range, but it's that sort of outside to inside range that you're gonna when you bridge and you make that contact.
And Xin Yi Liu He, I was told, fighting takes place in kissing distance. So it doesn't even think about long range. It will just charge you.
Sure.
And put shields up and try to get to the point where, one of the Chinese sayings I got was, wear the opponent like a shirt. Like, they should be literally, like, physically almost touching chest to chest with you when you're shooting those movements.
Wow.
So it's kind of weird, right? It's like a different point of view, I think.
Yeah, it sounds very different. The perspective is different.
Yeah, just a different vibe. Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
So that's my vibe on that, I guess.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I've got one off of that. One of the forums and it's funny too, because a lot of the other Tan Animals method guys have reached out to you in some of the forums and asked you quite a bit about it. And it's your Liuhe linking form, Eagle and Bear Fight for Survival.
Oh yeah.
And what do you think is very unique about that form? Is it like anybody else's linking form where you're taking characteristics of Tell us about that.
This thing has its own thing, actually. Yeah, it's really interesting. George made form. George made Bear and Eagle. Yeah. So back to strategies and such, right? In Xin Yi, there's kind of only 2 things that happen. Okay. Are you there, or did I lose you?
Nope. We're still here. We always see you.
Looked like it froze. So the idea is that you have open and close. So if we're just going to go yin yang, there's opening the body. So like opening up your chest or closing your chest or opening up your back, right? Stretching it out or closing your back. So if Xin Yi is looked at only as open and close, the bear and eagle form does that for the entire length of it. And it only goes open, close, open, close, every move. If you're lost, all you got to do is go, did I close or open? Because the next one's the opposite. So
funny.
You do this really long set, and all it does is it teaches you to contract and expand over and over and over and over, right? And then the traditional set, the older set, the 10 animal form, I mapped it, like where you open and where you close and stuff, just to see what would happen, right? Because there's a pattern to be found, I figured. So bear and eagle is just yin yang, open, close, open, close. 10 animal is staccatoed. 10 animals like close, 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 open, close, close, open, 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 close, open, close. Because how do you keep up with that? It's very hard to find a pattern inside there, right? Especially at high speed in combat. But that's the fighting form, not the training form. Right?
Yeah.
So here's how you open and close your body. Here's techniques that actually work really well together because they're motor sending somebody into a pattern that they don't see is there until it's too late, usually. Yeah.
That's fascinating. Our bear eagle is a little bit like that too. Our eagle bear. We've got our 12 animals method. It's yin and yang, yin and yang, yin and yang, yin and yang.
Is it really the same? It's just doing that? Yeah.
It's only 2 moves. It's only 2 moves. That's it. Do it on one side, do it on the other. You've got the coiling, for your yin, and then you've got the openness for the yang.
Yeah.
And
totally, man.
Just up, down, up, and it's got a spiral and a lengthening extension. Spiral, lengthen, extension, spiral, lengthen. One side, the other, one side, the other, one side, the other.
Yeah, because that's what I mean. Like, we're just also similar, really. We really are, right? That's awesome, man. Yeah, I've never seen that one.
Nobody likes, in the Heat Song family, nobody likes that form except for me. I think it's the coolest form.
Really?
Yeah.
Don't listen to those guys. Bear Eagle's awesome.
Yeah. Owen's going to punch me with it the next time I see him. I like this form. Look, it works just fine.
I like it. Yeah. Get so good that you make other people like it. The hard way. Yeah. It's beating you up. You should like it. Exactly.
All right. I've got the big question for you now. Not that your origin story wasn't.
Oh, this is the big question. Okay, good.
You ready?
Sure. Why not?
You have a student teaching in the United States now.
Maybe. I'm not admitting to anything yet.
Very good. You have someone that's been underneath you for a while and is teaching your material.
Yep.
As a teacher, how do you feel like your student is carrying on your work, carrying on the work in and of itself?
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think that they bring to the table that is uniquely theirs in the process of going from student to teacher, and how they relate to the material as a whole?
Okay, so I have a student, Dan. Dan teaches in McHenry, Illinois. He's got a Red Jade school down there. And he in particular, okay, so Dan, he knows everything. He's got the whole Ma family system, which is quite a deal, to be honest. It's a lot of crap. The biggest thing I've noticed, Danny as a student, first of all, okay? Danny as a student has a training problem, just like the rest of us. So he's got some OCD, for sure. And that's generally what carries us through into high levels of skill, is we usually have some kind of OCD problem, I think. But what's most interesting about him, Danny trained about 15 years before he met me. So he had lots of foundations. So my work with him has mainly been not even teaching him new foundations, but pointing out things. Hey, you know a horse stance. Did you know you shouldn't be knocked over in one? Thud. Oh, well, let's fix that. It's been a lot of that. More than anything, what I'm most impressed with about Dan is that he understands the theoretical, philosophical part of it to a degree better than his age, let's just say. As he's progressed, he kind of became a copy of me. which I expected. I've had a couple of students that have gotten to higher levels, and it's the same thing I saw me and my brothers do. We all started doing our teacher's kung fu. And the biggest thing I think for Danny that's been happening though is that he started doing my kung fu. It didn't work very well for him because I'm a lot bigger than Danny.
Yes.
I can do things that he can't, right? So when he started teaching, that was one of his growing pains, was how to beat up his students and how to beat them up nicely enough. Finding out that muggles are actually really frail and it's easy to hurt them. And, you know, you can't hit them like it's you and me training, Danny. That's not going to work. Those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. So he's done really well. He's integrated the whole system to the point that he understands where it's going. Like the Ma family system is, at first it looks digital. There's ones and zeros. There's like, I'm doing praying mantis or I'm doing tiger. Okay. Never the twain shall meet. That's the first thing you learn. These two things are different. My teacher, if I was learning something like tiger, I used to get hit all the time in sparring. I'm doing tiger in sparring and somebody goes to hit me and I would switch into something else to save myself. Praying mantis or whatever, he'd just come up behind me and swat me in the back of the head. Because he's like, you got to lose in those systems or you're never going to find out how they work. So, because you have to see how they work differently, right? There's weaknesses in every martial arts system. They all have them, they all know it, and they all try to stop it. They all plug it back up. And that means you have to experience the system by itself, though. You can't just jump to somewhere else or you're losing some of the meat, right? So Danny got to the point where he was very digital. He could switch from tiger to snake to whatever. The thing is, it has to become analog. You got to get out the old vinyl records eventually. Yeah, man.
They sound better.
They do sound much warmer, much better, and there's an analog wave. So that means that yin and yang are no longer on and off. They're gradients, right? They shift into each other. Even if it's at high speed, they shift into each other. And once things start to become a gradient, things get better. Danny's getting there. He's working on that right now. However, to answer the last, what's he working on that he's bringing that is his own. Super cool. Danny's actually making his own workshop system right now based on what I taught him. And he also trained with a guy named Master Lin from China, Taoist guy. And he's been working on what I don't want to, it's his product, so I don't want to mess with it. It's called Pre-Heaven Power, which is a way to make Fajin out of your feet, essentially. Yeah, it's super weird. It's a Chen style thing. George did it. Ma Hong did it. I learned it from those guys, and it turned out that Drunken did it, but I didn't know that it did it till I met George. And then, yeah, Danny, I showed that stuff to Danny, and he has ran with it like hardcore. He's been working on it for months. Quite neat. He can push hands basically with his feet now. Like, you get in the stance with him and touch him, but only his feet are like rolling around on the ball, like on the archway. Mm-hmm. And the power comes out. It's super weird.
So you should have him look at one of these movement guru weirdo psychopaths that I absolutely love. You should tell Danny to look at David Weck's work. Weck is he actually invented the Bosu ball 20 years ago. And he's a weirdo, but David, I didn't know this, had studied right after he invented the Bosu ball and made some good money.
Yeah, good.
You know, he fell in love with Tai Chi, Bagua and Xin Yi, and he did it, but he learned what are the power sources and how are you tweaking the body to get these power sources. And so everything he does now, he makes these, they're called the Weck deck. It's like this foot thing that you sit on, and you can do your powerlifting with it and stuff like that, but it's based on the integration of the foot.
Stabilizer stuff.
Yeah. And so he does the far end stuff. He does the feet and the hands, and how does everything in the middle of that work?
That's awesome.
At the
that sounds very similar, actually. Yeah. Very similar.
I'll have to send you some of his stuff. He's one of I love David because he's one of these outspoken, crazy, goofy, weirdos. But yeah, he's just turned 53, and he says, and he's a little fella too. And he's like, I think I'm faster and stronger now than I ever was in my 20s at 53.
Yeah. Why not? Sure.
That's
cool. Yeah, I'll have to check him out.
Foot Fajen. That is so wild.
Yeah, it's weird, eh? Yeah. Same with George. He does he was doing his Chen form and he had me hold his feet to feel what his feet were actually doing. So that all of the origin of movement come out of his feet instead of his torso. Really cool.
Do you know where he learned his Chen stuff?
Yeah, he learned from Ma Hong.
Oh, okay.
He learned from Ma Hong and who else? There was somebody else, but yeah, Ma Hong basically. I think it was George. Yeah. So
Did you ever get to do some of the land shoe that George does?
Oh, we played with it.
That system's interesting.
We played with it a little bit. Yeah, it's long fist basically, except that it's got power stretching inside it. That's its big trick. Yeah,
I've never seen. I'm a geek. Every once in a while, I'll spend that hour on the YouTube going, oh, that's neat.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah.
Oh, that's neat. But I have seen some land shoe, and there's some of the things that they do on the far ends where the body's fully extended. Then they'll rotate either the wrist or the elbows inward, and you'll see this interesting body dynamic going on that I've never quite seen anywhere else.
A lot of people have told me that they think the reason like George's tribe is the way they are is Lan Shao. I've had people tell me that before. I think it has to do with the power stretching, because that's what that is when they're doing that, they're power stretching, right? Which is like taking tiny little bits of the Yi Jin Jing and putting it in your forms, right? So your muscle tendon changing all the time. That's what it looks like to me. Because that if you did that all the time in all your forms, God, you'd end up screwed uply powerful, like super powerful.
Superhuman.
I mean, just Yi Jin Jing changed me hardcore, like let alone doing it in every form for years and years. I'd be nuts. Because that's what it all kind of comes down to is just the tendon power makes a big difference, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, very much so.
Owen, did you have any other questions for Neil?
I'm sure that I could come up with another 3 hours worth of questions, but I think that at least for this go round, I have had most of my questions answered. It's been great.
I've got one last one for you, Neil, and
sure, man.
Answer it if you like. What is something that you would like to see change for the Chinese martial arts world in general? What is something that you feel like eggs you on? You're like, oh God, what are we doing over here?
Dude.
Here's a bag of worms. Here's a bag of dirt for you. Hey, I've already counted it. This is a little bit over PG-13. You said the F word twice.
That's possible. So we're okay now? I can just let go? Is that what you're saying?
That's exact. Now it can be Morse code. Yeah. If you want to do
Morse code, that's right.
That's exact. Yeah.
Oh man. Oh, I wish everybody could get along. I really think that's the problem. Man, we have so many. I think the major problem is that there's tribalism. If there wasn't this tribalism of my teacher, my style is the best, my lineage is the only real one, you all suck, then everybody would start to realize that we actually, this is what drives me the most crazy. Yeah. Okay. You want to know what drives me the most crazy? It's that I look on the internets and I see a whole group of my peers that are my age, older than me, younger than me, tens of thousands of us. And we all like the same hobby. And somehow we can't be friends.
Yeah.
Like, if we were all into trucks, we could all talk trucks and be friends. But somehow, martial arts people just can't be friends. They're too busy being wound up in their ego instead of realizing that the similarities between us are way bigger than the differences. I mean, if nothing else, it's like, let's all go sit down for pizza. Everybody likes pizza. You weird Hawaiian pineapple-eating strangers can go sit at that end of the table. But it doesn't mean, I knew it. I could tell. I could totally tell that you were a pineapple.
I'm only 15 miles out of Boulder, man. I mean, that comes with the territory, bro.
That's fair. But like everybody can agree on pizza. It doesn't matter what we put on it. Our flavors don't matter, but we should all be able to get along. And that's what drives me the most crazy. When I see the hate, especially coming from young people, because that they're learning that hate from their teachers.
That's exactly right. It's passed on anger. It's passed on hatred.
Yes, it is. It's intergenerational trauma, right? And then
it's fascinating. Can I throw in 2 cents here? I was just talking to a gentleman the other day, and it was someone that had done Southern Mantis, and I've worked with Southern Mantis people. I think Southern Mantis is awesome. I've got to work with somebody that did Chugar, which is probably the older Chuga, the oldest one. I've done some Bamboo Temple, Southern Praying Mantis.
Oh, nice.
And this gentleman was in Chowga. And he's like, oh, we don't like this people and we don't like these people. I'm like, have you ever met anyone from those different systems? He's like, no. I'm like, well, where are you hearing this from? He's like, well, my teacher. And I'm like, so you've never met and worked with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And you're already taking on these prejudices that are from 80 to 100 years ago in Hong Kong.
Utterly irrelevant things.
Exactly. And right now I feel like Chinese martial arts is trying to survive in the like a combative context of any kind. And instead of trying to come together to see what do we have that's similar, we're still doing pissing contests on each other that were 200 or 300 years old.
Exactly. And it's just so dumb. Like it really is. One of my favorite things of traveling and workshopping is that I get to teach and all that stuff, and I get like free plane tickets, which rules. But, really I'm looking for teachers. Like that's what I'm really been doing for the last 15 years. I knew that Joe Blow at the YMCA wasn't the guy anymore. So I started hunting. And I've seen a lot of martial arts schools, man. Like in a lot of places in China, in the depths of the jungle. And like, dude, everybody's the same. We all suck. None of us are super good because this stuff's hard. And we're all trying to do our best. And there's like racial prejudices and all kinds of things that are left over from great granddad that don't mean anything anymore. Anything. Like the whole martial arts world, we could all be brothers. That's what we're supposed to be. We're not supposed to be fighting each other. I think that the relevance of Chinese martial arts has never been more important than right now, because the big pandemic I see in the martial arts world is the stripping of all of its beauty down to MMA. And you take 90% of the art and throw it away. And now you only got quote unquote what's real. Well, I'm sorry, but what's real is you don't get in fist fights all day long. What's real is you have to live your life and be a decent human being.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we teach. Not to be assholes.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we're assholes to each other. Like, how are we going to teach our students not to be that way if we're doing that to them and to our own peers, right? That's what's got to change, man.
Yeah.
That's what my opinion is anyway.
Very well said.
Wow, Neil. That was awesome. That's a great caveat. Wow. That was it, man. That was it. Right? That was great.
Yeah, that's great.
That was amazing.
Thanks.
First off, thanks for your time today.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
And second off, I don't want to speak for Owen here, but at some point in the next year or two, we'd love to get you back on. Maybe pick your brain about something else.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime, man. I'd love to chat more with you guys. This is fun. I've never done something like this.
Yeah, cool.
Oh, really? Awesome. Yeah. One last thing. Are there any tours or seminars that you've got coming up?
Mm-hmm. Anything you want to promote? Anything? Yeah, you want to just give yourself a shout out to?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I should probably say something, right? Like, I'm actually kind of taking the winter off, though, as far as workshopping. I'm working on a book right now. I'm trying to write there's a plug, kind of. Because everything went online because of COVID, I've been thinking about how to teach online, right? So I have private students and I do private sessions. There's my plug. If you want to train with me, I'm teaching online. Get a hold of me through Facebook or neilripski@gmail.com. the book I'm trying to write is because I started teaching online. And there's a few things that I've noticed, right? Number one, we can't touch, which is a major problem. So workshops have to happen at minimum still. But I kept thinking there's something not right. Something's missing, even with that. And I realized that it was going down into the sweaty dungeon with my brothers and putting up with each other and going out for beer afterwards. And it was the talks after class and tea with Shifu, or, you know what I mean? The brotherhood, familial part of it is missing now because we're not at the clubhouse anymore. So I've been thinking, I'm trying to write a book. I got kind of a table of contents now of the seasons of martial arts training. So it's like, as a student, these are the seasons you go through. You know, things, lampposts that you might want to be aware of. You know, there's going to be a time when you're eager to train. There's going to be a time when you're going to hate it there and there's nothing else in the world that you'd rather do. You know, then there's going to be times where your ego flares because you're totally awesome and you won the trophy, and you got to keep that shit in check too. So I'm trying to give, I don't know. I was given something incredibly precious, I think, by my teachers. But it wasn't like just that I can smack dudes around. I am not the same human being I would have been. And I'm not the same human being I was 3 years ago either, because I continue to practice and change, right? Mm-hmm. So I feel like I want to try to write a book about the other stuff. I want to write a martial arts book doesn't have any martial arts in it. It's all the other stuff.
That's awesome.
You know? Yeah, so anyway, that's what I'm doing. I put out my new book, The Compendium of Drunken Boxing, on Lulu, and I teach private lessons, and I'm writing my book, and that's it. And I play with my dog. That's what I'm doing this winter. That's fantastic.
Well, when we put this out, we'll have your website up and a few other different things.
Sure, man.
And
we'll link to all that in the show notes.
Totally.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much. If you have any questions or if you ever just want to shoot the shit, call me.
Nice.
Thanks.
Very cool.
Thanks. Neil, have a blessed day, my friend.
Yeah, you have a good one. Good to talk to you.
Thanks, you guys.
Take care.
See ya.
Bye-bye.